We've got to do something, Aang said, his voice worried but determined. No, we can't intervene, Ella whispered. Shin made it very clear that everyone's going to end up in more trouble if we show ourselves. How can they get into more trouble than this? That commander guy is going to burn the whole village down unless we do something, Sokka pointed out. Katara tried to focus on what the others were saying, but her thoughts kept escaping to the events on the street below. He is here? He has followed us here? All the way from the South Pole? And he's a prince? What is he doing now? A proper Agni Kai required all sorts of preparations, but Zhao and Zuko were on the same page about this one being handled according to the short ceremony. Neither of them even bothered to take off their armor. This left the risk that one or both were hiding concealed weaponry, but Zuko trusted that Zhao wouldn't resort to playing dirty in front of all of his men. Zuko walked over to his uncle and gave him the 4 small blades he always carried with him, hidden in various places in his armor. Zuko was sure that Iroh would give him a lecture on how foolish his behavior was, but the older man simply took the knives and nodded. No lecture? Not this time, Uncle answered. I am proud of you for standing up for what you believe in. Extremely worried, but proud. Zuko was surprised by Uncle's words, but there was no time for a groundbreaking conversation. As Zuko turned to look at his adversary, he saw that Zhao was also done giving orders to his second command. Remember your basics, Uncle shouted after Zuko, as the prince walked toward their improvised battle arena. Although the village was small, the main street was wide enough for an Agni Kai. Zuko wasn't sure how the villagers understood what was going on, but at least they had the good sense to back off and make space for them. Why fight the Fire Nation when they preferred to fight each other for change? Zuko reached as good a spot as any, turned his back to Zhao and knelt. A small prayer to Agni was one of those ceremonies that never got skipped over. Zuko's royal tutors made him memorize several traditional Fire Nation prayers, but Zuko didn't feel like bothering the spirits over this. Instead, he used the moment to calm himself and plan his first moves. Zuko got up and turned around. He would not fail. Zhao was already up, a confident smile on his face. The crowd around them consisted of Zhao's men and a few curious Earth Kingdom civilians. The noise was enough to drown out Zhao's next words, but Zuko could read them from the man's lips. This will be over soon. For a moment, both men just stood staring at each other. The audience grew quiet, sensing the hostility in the air. Zuko knew what to do. Countless times Mizra had told him that the best advice to remember in a fight was to appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. To Zhao, the only thing more important than an easy victory was a victory that looked easy, since the commander wouldn't want anyone mistaking them for equals. Zhao would try to end the fight quickly to overpower his opponent. Zuko would provide him with that kind of adversary he was expecting. If Zuko played his hand right, Zhao would be down before he knew what hit him. One lame turtle duck coming right up. Mizra, I'll make you proud. Zuko sent 2 small fire jabs Zhao's way, and tried to look surprised when the commander blocked them with ease. Then he waited to see what Zhao would do. Zhao sent a surprisingly small firebolt his way. Zuko redirected it without difficulty. Testing the ice, are we? 2 can play that game. Zuko's next attack wasn't much more impressive, but he tried to make his expression look like he was pissed and giving this his all. As Zuko had expected, Zhao was determined to end this fast. The commander began a series of fire fists. Zuko did exactly many whirling kicks to block them. Zuko's choice of block was a overkill, but hopefully Zhao would interpret it as a mistake and make for an inexperienced fighter. The triumphant commander got closer and closer, until Zuko could no longer block his attack and had to roll over to dodge it. Here's your chance. Take it. As Zhao prepared to finish Zuko off, Zuko made his move. Prince got back to his feet, creating a small arc of fire for camouflage. Zhao had to lift his hands to keep the fire from hitting his face, leaving his center wide open. Zuko used a back rotation kick, partially to please Iroh for using a basic technique. An impressive arc of flames threw Zhao a city block away. The commander landed, still twirling. Zuko ran over to Zhao so that when the man finally recovered enough to look up, all he'd see was Zuko's fist ready to strike him down. Zhao grimaced. There was a flash of fear in his eyes. Do it! The downed commander shouted. And Zuko did, though not to Zhao's face. Zuko's finishing blow hit the ground a few inches behind the man's head. Zuko looked up and addressed Zhao's troops. I, Prince Zuko, order you to retreat back to your ships immediately. As no one objected loud enough for him to hear it, the prince was pleased with the outcome. Zuko turned to walk back to Uncle. Suddenly he felt heat right behind him. Turning around just in time to see his uncle redirect a large firebolt that had been about to hit him in the back. You just don't do that! Zuko was in such a state of fury and disbelief that he started to do the first katana he had in mind. Uncle waited for him to stop. Suddenly one of Zhao's men pointed behind them and shouted, "Look, it's the Avatar!" Zuko turned around and could barely believe his eyes. Apparently one of the fire blasts had set a decorative tapestry on fire, and as advertised, behind it was Aang and his friends. Oh, this is just typical. Of course they had to throw their fire right this way. I bet this sort of stuff never happened to Avatar Kyoshi, Sokka thought. Sokka preferred to have a plan before taking action, but that was a luxury they could no longer afford. It was time to act. All of Team Avatar burst into motion. Aang began by doing a few sweeping attacks with his fans, downing half a dozen Fire Nation soldiers off their feet. The militia joined in the fight as well, and unsuspecting firebenders were tackled from behind. "There's too many of them. We have to lure them out of the village." Sokka summarized the situation to Katara and Illa. "Also, a diversion wouldn't hurt." "I can provide some cover," the Earthbender girl said and jumped off the roof. She hit the street. Small fissures spread around her, causing the earth to shake slightly. It wasn't enough to throw anyone off their feet. When Illa thumped both fists in the ground dirt, with help from Aang's airbending, the death cloud quickly spread across the main street, limiting everyone's limit of sight to a few meters. Good thinking. They can't throw fire at random, and if they do, they're likely to hit their own than us. "Okay, Aang, Katara, follow me." Sokka landed from the rooftop and began heading toward the town's secondary gate. Katara was right on his heels. Aang jumped up and down between the streets and the rooftops, moving in his unpredictable, airy way, throwing away firebenders whenever they stumbled his way. Sokka spotted an unwitted Fire Nation soldier and hurled his boomerang at the man, knocking him down. When he heard someone calling his name, he turned and saw Shin approaching. The militia leader was carrying a hammer in his hands, and the weapons man looked much more menacing than before. He followed by Illa and another militia member whose name Sokka didn't know. "Sokka, you have to get the Avatar out of here," Shin ordered. "I'm like 15 seconds ahead of you on that," Sokka replied. Shin nodded and added, "We still need to talk. When you're safe, rendezvous with us by the little pond roughly the shape of a star, northeast of the village." Sokka nodded and kept running. The Avatar's tricks didn't fool Zuko. The airbender and his gang was obviously headed toward the southern entrance of the village, and Zuko intended to beat them to it. The prince ran across the chaotic battlefield, scaling a wall a few times when a bulky militia guy got into his way. Zuko felt betrayed. He had stood up for these people because he thought they were unarmed citizens, but to prove Zhao right, the villagers had turned out behind the Earth King militia as well as the Avatar. Zuko felt like a naive fool, but he didn't have time to be hard on himself. He still had to fight his way out of this mess and capture the Avatar. A flash of orange informed Zuko his hunch had been correct. The young monk was on top of a nearby building, headed south. Zuko reached for the hidden knife on his belt, only to realize he had left all his weapons with Uncle. With 4 leaps, he scaled the wall next to him instead, and hauled himself onto the roof. The Avatar did not notice Zuko's approach, but Katara did. The waterbend was still standing on the ground level. From there, she sent a small wave of water in an attempt to knock Zuko back down. Zuko took cover behind a chimney. In the meantime, Aang landed, and he and Sokka ran for the town gate. Before the prince had time to go after them, Katara sent another blast of water, this time in front of Zuko, to block his way, jumping back down to the street to meet his attacker face to face. "I won't let you hurt Aang or anyone else again. I won't let you." "Are we really going to have to go through this again?" Zuko shot back, irritated. "As many times as it takes for justice to be served. You are evil and it is time for you to pay." "You are angry at me for using you to find the Avatar. I understand. I would be too. But I didn't kill your mother." You have no right to speak of my mother! Zuko realized his poor choice of topic a moment too late. Waterbending was powered by strong emotion, and now Katara was fuming. She called more water to her aid from a nearby well. Katara's next two charges were fierce, but her aim was still all over the place. Zuko rolled over to duck an attack and simultaneously grabbed a fist-sized rock from the ground. In a lack of more sophisticated projectiles, Zuko threw the rock at Katara. It hit her in the middle of her body, knocking the air out of her. Zuko didn't remember where exactly waterbenders drew their power from, but he hoped losing one's breath was a damper for any other benders as it was for firebenders. The prince had to break Katara's focus before she could use her waterbending to slice into pieces. As he had hoped, Katara gasped and all the water she'd been holding fell to the ground. She wasn't down yet, though. Before Zuko had time to reach her, she was already preparing a new assault. You monster! You have no right to be in my mind! Katara shouted and sent another wave at Zuko. Zuko blocked it with his fire and closed in on the waterbender. With his usual anger to power him, Zuko would have probably taken her down by now. Instead, he was hesitating when he should have been acting. For as hard as he tried, Zuko couldn't erase Katara's accusations from her mind. She's right. I saw more than I ever had the right to, and she did nothing to deserve that. Zuko wanted to say he was sorry, but there was nothing he could do to make up for his intrusion. Well, almost nothing. Zuko placed his next steps carefully. He danced around Katara, and before the waterbender had time to call forth her water, Zuko grabbed her hands and twisted them behind her back. For a brief moment, their bodies were so close to one another that Zuko could feel Katara's heartbeat. Before Katara had time to struggle free, the prince let go of her hands and pushed her from behind. Katara fell to her knees, but when she got up, the boy was nowhere to be seen. She looked around herself, trying to locate her enemy. No, he couldn't have just vanished. He's just human. He has to be. A familiar sound cut through to Katara's mind, even past her frantic thoughts. It's Aang. He's calling for Appa. Appa is back! Katara realized she had to move. The longer they stayed in the village, the greater the risk that something bad happening to Sokka or Aang. They couldn't afford to stall just because she didn't have what it took to beat Zuko. Katara ran toward Aang's voice, rounding the city gate. She saw Aang and Sokka were already climbing up atop the bison, calling for her to join them. Normally, Zuko would have gone straight for the Avatar, but in this case, he figured he would make more headway by backtracking a little and avoiding his fight with Katara. Zuko had let the waterbender escape from him on purpose, but he had no intention of letting the Avatar get away. Zuko ran a short distance back to the village and took cover behind a building. He ran across a small alley that led to the village's outer wall. Before climbing the wall, Zuko could see the Avatar's bison had landed and the air nomad was getting ready to flee. Before Zuko had time to do anything, a small vicious firebolt hit him in the back. The prince managed to control his fall, so they fell back on the village side, where the fall was considerably shorter. Upon landing, Zuko rolled back on his feet, facing his attacker. It was Zhao. You little traitor! You impeded my investigation in order to capture the Avatar yourself, and thus side with your enemy nation. Zhao shouted. Why is he coming after me? I thought he would put this behind him while the Avatar is still around. Zuko realized that Zhao didn't know the Avatar was still around, which meant that Zuko had to find a way to get after the air nomad without tipping the commander off about his intentions. Perfect. Zuko sent a quick fire jab Zhao's way. While the man prepared to counter it, Zuko ran straight for him. He tried to push the commander out of his way, but the old man raised fire to block Zuko's path completely. Zuko leapt over the flames and tackled Zhao off his feet. When Zuko finally got past Zhao, he intended to run for the town gate, but Zhao's next words stopped him in his tracks. If you run from me now, you know better than your traitor mother. The Earth Kingdom militia had more or less retreated from the fight with the help of their dust cloud. However, since Commander Zhao was nowhere to be found, the situation in the village was still a mess. No one appeared to be in charge. When the bison took to the skies outside the city wall, Iroh raised his options. The situation needed some crowd control. Are you all so busy standing around acting useless that you have not noticed the Avatar is escaping? Uncle stated loudly and pointed to the sky where the bisons could still be seen for a moment before vanishing behind houses and walls. Well, aren't you going to go after him? Uncle suggested with a more empathetic tone. Commander Zhao's orders were, I'm sure the Commander Zhao would be very angry if you lost the Avatar again, Iroh pointed out. In fact, the Commander has most likely gone after the Avatar himself, feeling that your orders under the circumstances would be self-evident. The Avatar is, after all, the greatest single threat to our nation's war efforts, and the standing orders of the Fire Nation soldiers are to do anything to take to arrest him. I suggest you to return to your ships as fast as possible, so that you have a better chance of following the Avatar. Zhao's second in command looked convinced enough. He nodded and ordered the troops to retreat back to the main gate, into Hatai Bay. Uncle was relatively sure that if Zhao had been there, the first thing the commander would have done was find someone to blame, but that would have put them right back where they started. This way, the village will be spared, at least for the time being. With little luck, Zhao's troops might even take off without the commander, and that would give Zhao someone else to take his anger and frustration out on. Iroh was slightly concerned for his own and his nephew's safety once the Fire Nation forces retreated, but that was a minor inconvenience considering how badly the situation could have ended. The part that truly worried Uncle was the Commander Zhao was indeed nowhere to be seen. Nor was Zuko, and somehow Iroh guessed those two were connected. Zuko was used to insults, implied and blatant, but Zhao's was so unexpected that, for a moment, the prince completely forgot his hunt for the Avatar. Did you just insult my mother? Zuko shouted as he turned to look at the downed man. Zhao said nothing more, but somehow Zuko got the impression there was more to the words than just a bad loser trying to find new ways to insult his enemy. Zuko took a menacing step towards Zhao. My mother was not a traitor. Zuko could have walked away then. There was no reason why he shouldn't. None but that nagging doubt Zuko thought he put behind him years ago. What happened to my mother? It was unlikely that Zhao knew more than Zuko himself did, but he had to be sure. To the older man's surprise, Zuko walked back to the alley. Expecting an attack, Zhao tried to keep Zuko away, but the teenager blocked the commander's fire punch and grabbed his hand. Time to get to the bottom of this. 6 years ago. Sergeant Zhao was irritated. He had always been a natural leader among his peers. He had always been a promising firebender, even if Zhang was too bitter and jealous to admit it. Still, no one was willing to acknowledge his accomplishments. The Orin was a middle-sized battlecruiser, and their mission was to escort supply ships, making their runs between the Fire Nation proper and her Earth Kingdom outpost. It was hardly the short mission that paved one's way to glory, so for the time being, Zhao's military career was on the hold. It was past midnight, but Zhao couldn't sleep, as he passed his time by walking around the ship's corridors. Since they were out at sea, there was no need to keep a constant security patrol going. Zhao hadn't met a single soul on his walk to the ship's deck. The only thing that made their current trip slightly more interesting than the past dozen or so ones was their mysterious passenger. No one on the crew knew who he was or even what he looked like, because he had entered the ship wearing an all-covering, old-fashioned widow's attire, and hadn't left his room since. Only the captain of the Orin had allowed to go into that room, which meant the rumors and speculations among the crew was beyond wild by now. Zhao himself presumed the man to be one of the Fire Lord's spies on a secret mission that required keeping his identity to himself. If Zhao was right, he was relatively sure he was. The truly interesting question was which Fire Lord had sent him. The night the Orin had left the capital city was also the night Fire Lord Zulon had passed away in his sleep. Sending this spy could have been the old man's last act, but a more interesting scenario was that it had been Fire Lord Ozai's first act. What could be so important that even before his official coronation, Ozai had sent a spy into the dead of night on a secret mission? Now there lay a mystery that Zhao would have loved to be at the bottom of. Knowledge was, after all, a good way to power. The Orin would reach her destination tomorrow morning, so Zhao didn't have much time left to investigate. Also, try as he might, he couldn't think of a way to get inside the room without blatantly disobeying a direct order. Zhao walked up the ramp that led to the deck. He hoped the cool night air might help him think clearly. There, in the moonlit deck, stood a figure. Who are you? Zhao demanded as he walked toward the stranger. The hooded figure startled and turned to look at Zhao. To his surprise, there was no one he had ever met in person, but Zhao recognized the face anyway. Shocked and not knowing what else to do, Zhao knelt on the deck. Lady Ursa, Fire Lady Ursa, my serious apologies. I didn't realize you were out here this late. Lady Ursa looked wary, but her tone was polite. Just Lady Ursa, you may rise. Zhao lifted his head. The mysterious passenger, Zhao realized, isn't a spy at all. Lady Ursa was wearing a multi-layered gown. On top of that, she had a plain traveling cloak and a scarf that would have been worn to cover her face, though at the moment it hung loosely around her neck. No jewelry, no other obvious signs of power. No Fire Nation insignia. Zhao didn't have to see Ursa's displeased reaction to know he had just stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to know about. A man with more tact might have made his exit right then, but Zhao wasn't about to walk away from such an intriguing encounter. He tried to quickly think of something polite to say. Is there anything I can do for you, my lady? Anything I can bring you, perhaps? No. May I ask what are you doing here? Ursa hesitated before answering. I came out here to admire the scenery. Not what I was asking, and you know it, Zhao thought. He would have approached this from a different angle. Something was directly wrong with this picture, and Zhao intended to find out what. I'm deeply sorry for your recent loss in the family, Zhao said. Now Lady Ursa turned for the first time to really look at Zhao. He could see hints of panic behind her composed features. My loss? Ursa said. Zuko, my children. Has something happened to them? Zhao was baffled. He couldn't come up with anything wittier than the truth. No, my lady, I was referring to Fire Lord Azulon's passing. Somehow, Zhao's words made Ursa look sullen, almost angry. Zhao made a mental note of that before adding, I'm sure your children are fine. Why wouldn't they be? There had been such hatred in Lady Ursa's next words that Zhao would have taken a step back if he hadn't been kneeling on the ground. Fire Lord Azulon wasn't a member of my family. Zhao was surprised and shocked by her words, but tried to look politely indifferent. No one spoke of the Fire Lord in that tone. No loyal citizen, at least. Zhao was cautiously optimistic he had just been handed the key to unraveling this mystery. What is going on here? An authoritative voice asked from behind Zhao. As Zhao saw who it was, the sergeant hastily got up and saluted his commanding officer. Captain Ping. Sergeant Zhao, what do you think you're doing out here? The captain said, irritation and worry blatant on his voice. It's all right, Lady Ursa said to Ping, whom response bowed deeply to the noblewoman. Deeply, but he did not kneel all the way to the ground. Someone had fallen out of grace, Zhao noted. Captain Ping commented on the cold night air and suggested Lady Ursa would be more comfortable back in her room. Ursa bowed and walked away from the two men. Why are you out here? The captain demanded from Zhao as soon as Lady Ursa was out of hearing range. Just making sure everything was in order before we made land in a few hours. Zhao tried to sound respectful but unapologetic. The old captain's face wrinkled as he considered the situation, but finally he sighed and asked, How much do you know? Only we have a high-ranking guest on board our ship, though I do wonder why the crew was not informed of Lady Ursa's presence. I'm sure everyone would have considered it a great honor, Zhao said innocently as he could. She will leave the ship first thing tomorrow morning. Officially, she was never here. You may tell no one of what you've seen or heard tonight. Am I making myself clear? Crystal, sir. Zhao bowed deeply and added, I live to serve the Fire Lord's commands. Captain Ping did not deny Zhao's presumptions, which was as good as admitted they were correct. She was a traitor, and the Fire Lord had banished her for it. It was being kept secret to avoid a scandal. 2 weeks later, Zhao received a letter from the Fire Nation, informing him that he had been promoted to the rank of lieutenant for exceptional service to his nation. The letter had the royal seal on it. Finally, Zhao had gotten himself noticed. Zuko felt a bit nauseous, not just because of the disgusting way Zhao had used his mother's hardships for personal gain. However, there was a flicker of hope building in his chest. She's alive! Ilya and the rest of the militia were standing by the star-shaped pond, waiting for the Avatar to arrive. She hoped the air nomad would show up soon, because she couldn't stand another minute of the silent tension. It still seemed unreal just how badly she had messed up. Before Ilya had escorted the Avatar and his friends up to the roof, Shin had quietly told her that no matter what happened, she must make sure the Avatar would not be detected. A simple enough job she had completely failed at. Shin was very disappointed in her, and it really stung. Shin was Ilya's idol. His inspiring words had convinced her to join the militia in the first place, against her family's wishes. Ilya was 17 years old. She understood that women who were left to take care of the farms and provide food for the soldiers was a crucial part of improving their community. But as an earthbender, she felt like she could do more than just remove rocks from fields. 3 of her 4 brothers were in the army, and after she ran off to join the militia, her family had disowned her. They thought the militia was unpatriotic and against the army. The militia wasn't. They were just against the army's bad leadership. Her family didn't see it that way. The militia was her new family, and now she had let them down too. The Avatar's bison appeared above them and landed next to the pond. Shin didn't bother with pleasantries. "Are any of you injured?" "No, we are fine," the Water Tribe boy Sokka answered. "Well, what about you guys? Is everyone okay back at the village?" "The villagers are fine. The Fire Nation left soon after you did." What Shin was saying was almost the whole truth. Most of the Fire Nation soldiers had gone after the Avatar, but not all. An aged firebender giving orders had really taken his time to leave, eerily unfazed by the fact he was alone and surrounded by enemy forces. "That's a relief," the Avatar said. "I'm glad the whole thing worked out in the end." "Worked out? Hardly," Ilya thawed and rolled her eyes. "Have you given more thought to my proposal?" Shin asked. "Your proposal?" The Avatar's tone was innocent, but a small cringe around his eyes told Ilya that the boy knew what was coming. That the Avatar and the Earth Kingdom militia joined forces in our Kalmarin battle. "Oh yeah, that one," the Avatar said, and scratched the back of his head, looking uneasy. "Maybe we could decide that later, once we have gotten to know each other a little better," Sokka put in, but the Avatar shook his head. "No, Sokka," the Airbender said. "I have my answer. It's no, and it's not going to change." Shin looked disappointed, and even a bit angry, but his voice remained calm. "So be it." "Look, let me explain," the Avatar continued, looking at everyone around him. "It's not like I think you're bad people or that your demands are evil. It's just that I'm the Avatar, and since it's the Avatar's job to maintain peace in the world, I can't actively support an organization that considers civil war a potential means to reach its goals. If there ever comes a time when you want to have talks and sign treaties, call me and I'll be right there to help you with that, but I won't help you start a revolution." If the Avatar had meant his little speech conciliatory, he really did not understand the militia. The Avatar was saying that the current leaders had the law on their side, and were thus the only side that had any right to enforce their beliefs, effectively reducing the militia to a bunch of terrorists. Shin and the other leaders said their farewells to Aang, Katara, and Sokka. Perhaps the Avatar and his Water Tribe friends sensed the coolness in the atmosphere, for they did not stick around for too long. "Look, Aang, I think we need to talk about what happened back there," Sokka said hesitantly once Appa had gained some altitude. "You're absolutely right. Zuko wasn't there today by accident. He had followed us all the way from the South Pole, and he'll keep it following us, and that's why we should be prepared for him next time we meet." "He won't catch me off guard 3 times in a row," Katara promised to herself. True, but that wasn't exactly what I'm talking about. I meant what happened with the militia," Sokka said. "Look, I know you like them and would have wanted me to help them, but I just can't. I'm sort of not even allowed to," Aang defended himself. "Whoa, I'm not trying to accuse you of anything," Sokka said quickly. "And for the record, I don't like them that much, and even if I had, I would have sided with you, because as we told you back at the Southern Air Temple, you're part of Royal Family now, and family sticks together in this kind of situations." Katara put her arm around Aang's shoulder to emphasize her brother's words. Aang gave her a weak smile. He was probably still upset that he hadn't been able to be friends with anyone. Sokka went on, "We are not in league with the militia. We probably know worse for it. But talking with them made me realize how big of a job we have ahead of us. Keeping that in mind, I think we should have some type of agreement on what exactly it is that we want to happen and what all we were willing to do to make it happen. Okay, Aang said. Are we much cheerier? That's at least easy. We want to end the war and restore peace and balance to the world. Obviously. But I think that the real question we should ask ourselves is, what kind of world are we trying to restore? Again, I say this to the best of ways, but Aang, you're a bit conservative, and I think we should talk about that. Conservative? Me? But I'm an airbender. We believe in detaching ourselves from the earthly possessions and seek freedom and harmony. We love practical jokes. Children of air aren't conservative. Aang said, baffled. Probably true, but let's not forget that you are in fact 112 years old. It's only natural for someone who spent 100 years inside an iceberg to like things that are the same way they are before. If I had been sent to the future, I'd probably think all the changes that happened while I was gone were weird and alien. If I had given a chance, I would want most of the things to go back exactly the way they used to be, but necessarily because they're not bad, but because they're different. A lot's changed while you were gone, and granted most of it for the worst. I should know, since the Southern Water Tribe has lost more than most in the last century, but I still believe that at least some of the changes are necessary, and even good. What I'm trying to say is that when we do restore balance to the world and all that, I bet there's going to be even more changes after that, and you're going to be in a position to help decide which of those changes happen and which don't. But, Aang mumbled, sounding miserable. How am I supposed to decide all that? I'm just 12 years old. I don't have Gyatso or other wise people to help me. You have us, Katara said in a comforting tone. We will help you, and so will Suki and Haru and all the other friends you're going to make along the way. Yeah, and we'll help you fight your battles on the battlefield and off it, Sokka pitched with an encouraging smile. But since we still have a long way to go before the world is saved, now might be a good time to start considering where you stand on all sorts of issues. Katara understood Sokka's point, but she feared the air nomad either did not or would not forget his worries as they set off on a new adventure. Though, at least for the time being, Aang actually looked thoughtful. It's a start. Suddenly, Sokka reached behind Katara's back. Hey, what are you doing? Katara protested until her brother opened his hand. And it was Katara's necklace. My necklace! Katara exclaimed as she took the object from Sokka. I thought I lost it for good. Where did you find it? Sokka laughed. All this time it was hanging from your water skin. Can you believe that? Katara's face fell. There was no way the necklace had been hanging from her clothing all this time. When the necklace had gone missing, she had been a prisoner on the Fire Nation prison rig, pretending to be an earthbender. She didn't even have her water skin at the time. Suddenly, a memory of strong and warm hands holding her own behind her back filled her mind. No, it's not from him. Where would he even gotten Mother's necklace? He wasn't there that day when it went missing. He was somewhere else, following us. Katara? Are you feeling okay? Aang asked and came to check her forehead for fever. You look a bit pale. Zuko looked even more pale than usual, but despite Uncle's insistent wishes, the young man hadn't even touched the strengthened tea Iroh had placed before him. Iroh had found Zuko and Zhao on an alley, each looking more upset than the other, as Uncle had guided his nephew out of the situation. Zhao had been accusing Zuko of, well, the man hadn't been explicit, but knowing what Iroh knew, he could guess what had transpired between the two. Whatever had been so important that had made Zuko reveal his illegal firebending power to the commander, Iroh could only begin to guess. Now they were safely back in Zuko's room aboard the ship. Uncle had insisted on answers. He knew his nephew well enough to know the boy didn't respond well to being prodded. So instead, Iroh waited patiently. Zuko would tell him when he was ready, and no sooner. Uncle? Zuko finally looked up from his hands. Have you given the crew any orders about our next heading? No, but if you would like me to, I can order them to keep heading north as usual. No, it's fine, Zuko said and bit his lip. Actually, I was thinking we wouldn't go after the Avatar today. Uncle nearly choked on his tea, but managed to compose himself in reply. That would probably be wise. A man needs his rest, and I think a small vacation would do a world of good for the crew as well. Zuko nodded absently. I read Zhao, the boy said, his tone oddly hollow. I found out that my mother could be alive. For once, Iroh didn't know what to say. Zuko went on quickly. So, I was thinking we could take a few days off and try to look into that. To make sure. Instead of going after the Avatar, was the part left unsaid. Iroh felt conflicted. On one hand, it would probably be a good thing Zuko had other things on his mind than his obsession with the Avatar. On the other hand, his nephew was still very young and vulnerable, and Iroh feared that going to look for Ursa would reopen old wounds. Eventually, Iroh nodded. Zuko had already made up his mind, and the boy had surely given this decision a lot of thought. Zuko wouldn't abandon his quest lightly. He wanted to support his nephew and help him find his own way, but if today that meant taking a closer look at a tragic event from Zuko's past, he would be right there by his nephew's side. Zuko lay under his blanket, but sleep eluded him. No surprise there, he wasn't a heavy sleeper. When you sleep, people you care about disappear. Zuko had always thought his mother had died 6 years ago. No one had actually told him that, but he always believed so because he knew his mother wouldn't have abandoned him. However, if she was alive, Zuko had to find her, even at the risk of losing the Avatar to Zhao. For all he knew, he was chasing ghosts. But if there was even a chance that Ursa was alive, in trouble, and needed his help, Zuko had to be there to give it. If I lost the Avatar, I could never go home. I would never become Fire Lord. I would never see Azula or father again. And somehow, if Zuko could get his mother back, it wouldn't be so bad.